The blue glow of my phone cut through the darkness like a knife. 2:17 a.m. Most decent people were asleep, but apparently my wife wasn't most people anymore. Busy now. I'll call after. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at those 5 words until they burned into my retinas. Caleb Mason, 34 years old, founder of a modest but successful tech company, reduced to reading his wife's lies in the middle of the night. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built my business on communication software, yet here I was, completely unable to communicate with the woman I'd married 3 years ago. Lila had been working late again. Her 3rd emergency client meeting this week. Funny how these emergencies always seem to happen after business hours, always required her phone to be on silent, and always left her smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. My fingers moved across the screen before my brain could stop them. Don't bother. Stay with him. My line's closed. The satisfaction lasted exactly 30 seconds before reality hit. I was alone in our historic townhouse in Salem, Massachusetts, surrounded by the smart home technology I'd installed to make our lives easier. Motion sensors, security cameras, automated locks, all the modern conveniences that were about to become weapons in a war I hadn't known I was fighting. I rolled out of bed and padded to my home office, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. The house felt different now, like a stage set waiting for the next act. Through the window, I could see the harbor in the distance, dotted with the lights of boats that belonged to people who probably weren't having their marriages implode via text message. The security system's control panel glowed softly in the corner. With a few taps, I pulled up the camera feeds. Our street looked peaceful, lined with similar historic homes that had been converted into expensive residences for Boston's tech elite. Mrs. Driscoll's house across the street was dark, though I knew the old woman was probably awake, watching everything through her curtains, like she always did. I opened my laptop and logged into the house's smart lock system. Another few clicks, and I'd changed all the entry codes. Every door, every window sensor, every possible way into what was now my house alone. My phone buzzed. Lila. What do you mean your line's closed? Caleb, we need to talk. I turned the phone face down and opened a bottle of Jameson from the cabinet. The whiskey burned, but it was a clean burn, honest in a way that nothing else in my life seemed to be anymore. The security camera alert chimed at 3:42 a.m. I watched on my phone as Lila's BMW pulled into our driveway, the headlights sweeping across the front of the house like searchlights. She sat in the car for a full minute before getting out, probably rehearsing whatever story she'd prepared. She looked beautiful, even disheveled. Her dark hair was mussed, her makeup smudged just enough to suggest passion rather than tears. The black dress she wore was new. I didn't recognize it, which meant it was probably purchased for someone else's benefit. I watched her walk to the front door, her heels clicking on the brick walkway. The sound echoed through the smart doorbell's speaker system. She tried her key first, then the backup code. When neither worked, I saw her face change on the camera feed. Confusion shifted to realization, then to something approaching panic. She pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed through the house, but I didn't move from my chair. Caleb! Her voice came through the intercom system. Caleb, open the door, my key isn't working. I took another sip of whiskey and watched her try the side entrance, then the back door. Each failed attempt was visible on a different camera feed. It was like watching a nature documentary about a predator suddenly finding itself locked out of its own territory. The pounding started at 4 a.m. Desperate, rhythmic thuds as she beat her fists against the front door. Caleb, this is ridiculous! Open the damn door! I opened the intercom app on my phone and spoke calmly into the microphone. Sorry, the line's closed. Try calling after business hours. This is my house, too. Check the lease agreement. It's in my name. You're a resident by invitation only. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. I could see her on the camera, standing in the circle of light from the porch lamp, rain beginning to fall from the October sky. We need to talk about this like adults, she said finally. Adults don't sneak around at 2 a.m. with other people's husbands. Another silence. Longer this time. I don't know what you think you know, but I know his name is David Brennan. I know he's the VP of marketing at Hartwell Industries. I know he drives a silver Porsche and lives in the Harbor Towers. I know you've been seeing him for 3 months. I didn't actually know any of that yet, but the sharp intake of breath through the intercom told me I was close enough to the truth to make her panic. Caleb, please, let me in and we can discuss this. There's nothing to discuss. Find somewhere else to sleep tonight. The rain was getting heavier now, turning from a drizzle to a steady downpour. I watched Lila huddle under the small porch overhang, her expensive dress getting soaked. Part of me, a very small part, almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My phone rang. Lila's number. "This is harassment," she said when I answered. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. I'll be happy to show them the text messages." "What text messages?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. "The ones you've been sending to David for the past 3 months. The ones where you discuss leaving me. The ones where you talk about taking half of everything I've built." The line went quiet, except for the sound of rain hitting the pavement. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sienna's very thorough when she forwards messages. You should be more careful about who you trust with your phone. Sienna Walsh had been Lila's best friend since college, a social climber who collected secrets like some people collected stamps. She'd approached me 2 weeks ago at Theo's bar, drunk on wine and gossip, spilling everything she knew about Lila's affair in exchange for what she thought would be my gratitude and attention. "You're lying," Lila said, but her voice had lost its edge. "Am I? Check your sent messages. Check the photos you sent him last Tuesday. Check the hotel receipts from the Marriott downtown." Through the camera, I watched her fumble with her phone, scrolling frantically through her messages. Her face went pale as she realized how much evidence existed of her betrayal. "Caleb, I can explain." I hung up and turned off the intercom system. 20 minutes later, I heard sirens. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the house at 4:47 a.m., their red and blue lights painting the neighborhood in alternating colors. I watched through the security cameras as Lila ran toward them through the rain, playing the role of distressed wife to perfection. I put on a bathrobe and slippers, made myself a cup of coffee, and waited. The doorbell rang at exactly 5 a.m. "Salem Police, we need to speak with you about a domestic disturbance." I opened the door to find 2 officers standing on my porch. The older one, a sergeant with gray hair and tired eyes, looked like he'd seen this kind of drama before. The younger officer stood slightly behind him, hand resting casually on his belt. "Good morning, officers. I'm Caleb Mason. This is my house. Your wife says you've locked her out and won't let her get her belongings." I stepped aside and gestured for them to come in. "Would you like some coffee? It's going to be a long conversation." The house was warm and well lit, a stark contrast to the cold rain outside. I led them to the living room, where I'd laid out several manila folders on the coffee table. "Here's the lease agreement," I said, handing the sergeant the first folder. "As you can see, the house is rented in my name only. Mrs. Mason has been living here as my guest." The sergeant examined the documents, while his partner looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture and artwork that Lila had insisted we buy. "Your wife claims this is a domestic violence situation," the younger officer said. I nodded and opened the second folder. I assumed she might say that. Here are the text messages she's been exchanging with her boyfriend for the past 3 months. As you can see, she's been planning to leave me and take half of my assets. She's also been discussing how to make false abuse claims to strengthen her position in a divorce. The sergeant's eyebrows rose as he read through the printed messages. Some of them were quite explicit. both intimately and in terms of Lila's plans for my destruction. "Where did you get these?" the younger officer asked. "They were forwarded to me by a mutual friend who was concerned about Mrs. Mason's behavior. Everything here came from her own phone." The sergeant looked up from the papers. "Mr. Mason, have you ever struck your wife or threatened her with violence?" "Never. You're welcome to examine the house for any signs of violence or struggle. You can also check the security camera footage from tonight. It shows everything that happened after she arrived home at 3:42 a.m. I pulled up the camera feeds on my tablet and showed them Lila's arrival, her attempts to enter the house, and our brief conversation through the intercom system. The footage was clear and showed no signs of aggression on my part. "She was out until almost 4 a.m., the sergeant observed. "Yes, with her boyfriend. As you can see from the text messages, they've been meeting regularly at the Marriott downtown." The officers exchanged glances. The sergeant closed the folder and handed it back to me. "Mr. Mason, we can't force you to allow someone into your home if they're not on the lease and you haven't committed a crime. However, we'd recommend that you allow Mrs. Mason to collect her personal belongings." "Of course, she's welcome to take anything that belongs to her. I've already packed most of her clothes and personal items. They're by the front door." I led them to the entryway, where 3 suitcases and several boxes sat neatly stacked. I'd spent the early morning hours going through the house, carefully separating Lila's belongings from mine. Her jewelry, clothes, books, and personal electronics were all packed and ready to go. "You've been busy," the younger officer said. "I'm very efficient when I'm motivated." We walked back outside, where Lila was waiting by the patrol cars. She'd managed to find an umbrella somewhere and had composed herself, though her makeup was still streaked and her dress was wrinkled. "Ma'am," the sergeant said, "your husband has agreed to let you collect your belongings. They're packed and ready by the front door." "This is my home too," Lila protested. "He can't just throw me out." "Actually, ma'am, he can. The lease is in his name only, and we haven't found any evidence of domestic violence or illegal activity on his part." Lila's eyes flashed with anger. "What about the text messages he claims to have? Those were obtained illegally." The sergeant looked at me. "Mr. Mason, how did you obtain these messages?" "They were forwarded to me by Mrs. Mason's friend, Sienna Walsh. Ms. Walsh became concerned about Mrs. Mason's behavior and felt I should know what was happening. Since the messages were shared voluntarily by someone who had legitimate access to them, there's nothing illegal about my possession of them." It was a carefully crafted half-truth. Sienna had indeed forwarded the messages, but she'd done so out of spite and jealousy rather than concern. She'd been trying to get closer to me for months, and exposing Lila's affair was her way of clearing the field. Lila stared at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "You bastard! You planned this whole thing." "I planned nothing. I simply responded to information I received about my wife's extramarital affair and her plans to defraud me in a divorce proceeding." The sergeant stepped between us. "Ma'am, I suggest you collect your belongings and find somewhere else to stay tonight. You can sort out the legal issues with a lawyer." "Where am I supposed to go?" I couldn't resist. "I'm sure David has room at his place. Harbor Towers, Unit 2847. Nice view of the water." Her face went white. I'd been guessing about the unit number, but her reaction told me I was close. The officers helped her load her belongings into her BMW while I watched from the doorway. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle, and the first hints of dawn were beginning to show in the eastern sky. As the patrol cars pulled away, Lila rolled down her window. "This isn't over," she called out. "Yes, it is," I replied. "The line's closed, remember?" I watched her drive away, then went back inside and poured myself another cup of coffee. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Theo Martinez, my best friend and the owner of the Irish pub where I spent most of my free time. "Heard sirens in your neighborhood. Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. I'll explain later." I settled into my favorite chair and opened my laptop. There was work to do. Lila might think this was just the beginning, but she had no idea how thorough I could be when someone betrayed me. The first thing I did was change all the passwords on our joint accounts. Then I called my lawyer. By 8 a.m., I'd filed for divorce, frozen our joint credit cards, and transferred all the money from our shared checking account into my personal account. Everything I did was legal. I checked with my attorney before taking any action. The second thing I did was call Sienna. Caleb? Oh my God. I heard what happened. Are you okay? I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I wanted to thank you for telling me the truth about Lila. I hated keeping it from you, but I didn't know how to bring it up. She's been my friend for so long, but what she was doing to you was just wrong. I appreciate your honesty. I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner sometime this week. I think I'm going to need some friendly company while I adjust to being single again. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'd like that very much. Great. I'll call you later to set something up. After I hung up, I smiled to myself. Sienna thought she was playing me, using Lila's secrets to get closer to me. What she didn't realize was that I was playing her right back. I needed an ally, someone who could provide inside information about Lila's plans and movements. Sienna's jealousy and ambition made her the perfect double agent. My phone rang. Unknown number. Caleb, it's David Brennan. I think we need to talk. David Brennan had a voice like expensive whiskey, smooth, refined, and probably hiding something that would burn on the way down. I'd never spoken to the man who'd been sleeping with my wife, but I'd done my research since Sienna's revelation 2 weeks ago. Mr. Brennan, I was wondering when you'd call. Look, this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Lila is very upset, and I think we should meet to discuss how to handle this like civilized adults. I almost laughed. Civilized adults don't usually sleep with other people's wives. That's a fair point, but the situation is more complicated than you might think. Really? Because it seems pretty straightforward to me. You've been having an affair with my wife for 3 months. She's been planning to leave me and take half of everything I've worked for. Now she's homeless, and you're calling me. What part am I missing? There was a long pause. She told me you two were separated. She said you'd been living apart for months and that divorce papers had already been filed. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? She seemed sincere, and she was clearly unhappy in her marriage. I opened my laptop and pulled up the security camera footage from the past month. Mr. Brennan, I have video evidence of my wife entering and leaving our shared home every single day for the past month. She's been sleeping in our bed, eating meals at our table, and using our joint credit cards to buy gifts for you. If that's what separation looks like, I've been doing marriage wrong. Another pause. Longer this time. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Because you didn't want to know. It was easier to believe her lies than to ask uncomfortable questions. What do you want from me? That was an interesting question. What did I want from David Brennan? Revenge seemed obvious, but I'd learned over the years that the best revenge was often just letting people face the natural consequences of their actions. I want you to understand something, Mr. Brennan. My wife is a liar and a manipulator. She's been using you to make herself feel better about betraying me, and now that her plan has blown up, she's going to try to use you in other ways. She'll want you to take care of her financially, emotionally, and probably legally. The question is, are you prepared for that responsibility? We haven't discussed anything long-term. You might want to start, because as of this morning she has no home, no job, and no access to the money she was planning to take from me. She's going to need someone to lean on, and you're the obvious choice. I could practically hear him thinking through the phone. David Brennan was 42 years old, divorced, and made good money as a VP at a mid-sized marketing firm. He lived alone in an expensive condo and drove a car that cost more than most people's annual salary. He was exactly the kind of man who could afford to have an affair, but couldn't afford the complications that came with it. She mentioned that she might need a place to stay for a few days. A few days? Mr. Brennan, she has nowhere else to go. Her parents live in Florida and haven't spoken to her in 2 years. Her sister is married with 3 kids and lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. Her friends are all mutual friends who are going to have to choose sides. Where exactly do you think she's going to go after those few days are up? I hadn't thought about it that way. You should, because I guarantee she has. I ended the call and immediately dialed Theo's number. Caleb, I was just about to call you. Word is already spreading about what happened last night. Half the neighborhood saw the police cars. Good. Let it spread. I have nothing to hide. You want to tell me what really happened? Come over for lunch. Bring beer. I'll explain everything. Theo arrived an hour later with a case of Sam Adams and a bag of sandwiches from the deli near his bar. He was a good friend, the kind who showed up when you needed him without asking too many questions first. So, he said, settling into the chair that used to be Lila's favorite spot, your wife's been cheating on you? For 3 months, maybe longer. How'd you find out? I told him about Sienna's revelation, the text messages, and my decision to change the locks. Theo listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head or muttering under his breath. You always were too good for her, he said when I finished. I never liked the way she talked to you, especially in public, like you were some kind of servant instead of her husband. You never said anything. What was I going to say? Hey, buddy, your wife treats you like crap? You wouldn't have listened anyway. You were crazy about her. He was right. I had been crazy about Lila, at least in the beginning. She was beautiful, ambitious, and seemed to genuinely admire what I'd built with my company. It had taken me 3 years to realize that she admired my success more than she admired me. So what's the plan now? Theo asked. Divorce? Clean break? Move on with my life? And the guy she was sleeping with? David Brennan. He called me this morning. Theo's eyebrows shot up. He called you? What did he want? To discuss the situation like civilized adults. Apparently Lila told him we were already separated. Classic. Make herself the victim and him the white knight. So what did you tell him? The truth. That he's about to become responsible for a woman with no job, no money, and no place to live. Theo laughed. I bet he loved that. He seemed to be reconsidering his life choices. We spent the afternoon drinking beer and watching football. It felt good to have normal male company after months of walking on eggshells around Lila's moods and demands. Theo didn't judge, didn't offer unwanted advice, and didn't try to convince me to work things out with my cheating wife. At around 4 p.m., my phone started buzzing with text messages. The first few were from Lila. We need to talk about dividing our assets fairly. I'm willing to go to counseling if you are. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. I showed the messages to Theo, who rolled his eyes. She's panicking. Probably spent the day with a lawyer who told her she's screwed. The next message was from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jennifer Walsh, Sienna's sister. I think you should know that Sienna has been planning this for months. She's not your friend. I stared at the message for a long moment before showing it to Theo. Who's Jennifer Walsh? Sienna's older sister, lives in Boston, works as a paralegal. I met her once at a party. Why would she warn you about Sienna? That was a very good question. I called the number. Jennifer, this is Caleb Mason. I got your text. Caleb, hi. Look, I debated whether to call you, but I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been going on. What truth? Sienna has been planning to break up your marriage for over a year. She's been in love with you since college, and she saw Lila's affair as an opportunity to get rid of her competition. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She encouraged Lila to cheat. She introduced her to David Brennan at a company party 6 months ago. She's been feeding Lila advice on how to hide the affair and plan for a divorce, And then she turned around and told you everything, making herself look like the loyal friend who was just looking out for your interests. I sat down hard on the couch. Theo was watching my face, clearly seeing that something was wrong. Are you sure about this? I have text messages between Sienna and Lila going back 8 months. Sienna has been manipulating both of you. She wanted Lila to cheat, so she could expose her and position herself as your savior. Why are you telling me this? Because I love my sister, but I can't stand watching her destroy people's lives. She did the same thing to her college roommate's boyfriend and to her best friend in high school. It's a pattern with her. Can you send me those text messages? I already did. Check your email. I hung up and immediately opened my email. Jennifer had sent dozens of screenshots showing conversations between Sienna and Lila. The messages painted a picture of manipulation and betrayal that was even worse than I'd imagined. Sienna had indeed introduced Lila to David at a party. She'd encouraged the affair, helped Lila plan secret meetings, and even suggested strategies for hiding evidence from me. Then, when the time was right, she'd turned around and exposed everything to me, positioning herself as the friend who was just trying to protect me. Jesus Christ, Theo said, reading over my shoulder. She played both of you. She played all 3 of us, David, Lila, and me. What are you going to do? I thought about that for a long moment. Sienna had manipulated my wife into having an affair, then manipulated me into trusting her. She'd destroyed my marriage for her own selfish reasons, then tried to position herself as my rescuer. But here's the thing. I was still glad my marriage was over. Lila had still chosen to cheat, regardless of Sienna's encouragement. David had still chosen to sleep with a married woman, and I had still chosen to end things rather than try to work it out. Sienna's manipulation had accelerated the timeline, but it hadn't changed the fundamental problems in my marriage. I'm going to let her think she won, I said finally. What? Sienna thinks she's successfully positioned herself as my next girlfriend. Lila thinks she can manipulate David into taking care of her. David thinks he can manage the situation without any real consequences. They're all about to learn that they've underestimated me. Theo grinned. Now you're talking. What's the plan? I smiled back at him. I'm going to give them exactly what they think they want, and then I'm going to watch them choke on it. The next morning, I called Sienna. Caleb, I've been so worried about you. How are you holding up? Her voice was perfectly calibrated, concerned, but not overly dramatic, supportive, but not pushy. If I hadn't seen Jennifer's text messages, I might have actually believed she cared. I'm doing better than I expected. Having dinner with you tonight really helped. We'd had dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown, where Sienna had played the role of supportive friend to perfection. She'd listened sympathetically as I talked about my marriage, offered thoughtful advice about moving forward, and subtly suggested that maybe I deserved someone who would appreciate me properly. I'm so glad. You deserve so much better than what Lila put you through. I keep thinking about what you said last night, about how some people show their true character when they think no one is watching. It's true. Lila showed you exactly who she really is. The irony was delicious. Sienna was lecturing me about people showing their true character while actively deceiving me about her own role in my marriage's destruction. I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner again tonight. Somewhere more private this time. Maybe I could cook for you at my place? There was a pause, and I could practically hear her trying to contain her excitement. I'd love that. What time? 7 o'clock? I'll send you my address. After I hung up, I called my private investigator. Yes, I had a private investigator. When you run a tech company, you learn to be paranoid about corporate espionage and employee theft. Marcus Webb was a former cop who specialized in digital forensics and background checks. Marcus, I need you to do some digging on 3 people. I want everything. Financial records, communication patterns, social media activity, the works. I gave him the names and basic information for Sienna, Lila, and David. If I was going to play this game, I needed to understand all the players and their motivations. How deep do you want me to go? Deep enough to find leverage. I have reason to believe all three of them have been lying to me about significant things. I want to know what they're hiding. This is about your wife's affair? It's about a lot more than that now. Marcus promised to have preliminary information by the end of the week. In the meantime, I had other preparations to make. I spent the afternoon shopping for dinner ingredients and wine. If Sienna wanted to play the role of my rebound girlfriend, I was going to give her a performance she'd never forget. At exactly 7 p.m., she knocked on my door. She'd dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual, with just enough cleavage showing to be enticing without being obvious. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. Sienna was an attractive woman, which made her betrayal even more disappointing. "Thank you. You look pretty good yourself." I'd put on a nice shirt and slacks, nothing too fancy, but enough to show I'd made an effort. The house was clean, candles were lit, and soft music was playing in the background. I was setting a scene, and Sienna was walking right into it. Dinner was perfect. I'd made her favorite dish, something I remembered from a conversation we'd had months ago at a party. She seemed touched that I'd remembered such a small detail. "This is incredible," she said. "I had no idea you were such a good cook." "Lila never let me cook for her. She said it was too messy, and she didn't like the smell of food in the house." It was a lie. Lila had actually enjoyed my cooking, but Sienna didn't know that. I was painting a picture of my ex-wife as controlling and unreasonable, which would make Sienna feel superior by comparison. That's ridiculous. Cooking together is one of the most intimate things a couple can do. I'm looking forward to learning that with someone who appreciates it. She blushed prettily and took another sip of wine. After dinner, we moved to the living room with a bottle of expensive red wine. I'd chosen it carefully, something good enough to impress her, but not so expensive that it would seem like I was trying too hard. "Caleb," she said, settling onto the couch next to me, "I need to tell you something." Here it comes, I thought, the confession, the moment where she admits her role in destroying my marriage and asks for forgiveness. "I've had feelings for you for a long time. Since before you married Lila, actually. I never said anything because I respected your relationship, but now that it's over—" She trailed off, looking at me with what appeared to be genuine vulnerability. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been moved by her apparent honesty. "I had no idea," I lied. "I tried to hide it. I dated other people, tried to move on, but I never stopped thinking about you. When I saw how Lila was treating you, how she was taking you for granted, it broke my heart. You've been such a good friend through all of this. I want to be more than a friend, if you're ready for that." I set down my wine glass and turned to face her fully. "Sienna, I care about you a lot. You've been there for me when I needed someone most. But I need to know that this is real, not just you trying to help me get over Lila." "It's real," she said, moving closer. "It's been real for years." I kissed her then, softly at first, then with more passion as she responded. She tasted like wine and lies, but I forced myself to play the part of a man falling for his wife's best friend. When we broke apart, she was breathing hard. "I should go," she said. "I don't want to rush anything." "Of course. But Sienna? I'm really glad you told me how you feel." "Me too." After she left, I poured myself a scotch and reviewed the evening. Sienna thought she was winning. She believed her long-term manipulation had finally paid off, that she'd successfully destroyed my marriage and positioned herself as my next relationship. What she didn't know was that I'd recorded our entire conversation. The next morning, I called David Brennan. "Mr. Brennan, it's Caleb Mason. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday." "Oh, hi. How are you doing?" "I'm doing well, actually. I've been thinking about what you said. about this situation being more complicated than I realized. Yes? I think you're right. Lila has been lying to both of us, and I think we're both victims here. There was a long pause. I appreciate you saying that. I was wondering if you'd like to meet for coffee. I think we should compare notes about what she's told each of us. Maybe we can figure out what's really been going on. That might be a good idea. We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown at noon. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, away from other customers but still in a public space. David arrived exactly on time, looking nervous and slightly disheveled. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of carefully maintained appearance that suggested he spent a lot of time and money on his looks. His suit was expensive, his watch was a Rolex, and his shoes probably cost more than most people's rent. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, sitting down across from me. "Thank you for being willing to have an honest conversation." I'd prepared for this meeting carefully. I had printouts of Lila's text messages, copies of our joint financial records, and a timeline of her movements over the past 3 months. I spread them out on the table like evidence in a trial. "This is what my marriage looked like from my perspective," I said. "Joint checking account, shared credit cards, mortgage payments, utility bills, 2 people building a life together." David examined the papers, his face growing more troubled with each page. "She told me you'd been separated for 6 months. Does this look like separation to you?" "No, it looks like she was lying to me." I pulled out another folder. "These are the text messages she sent you during the same time period. As you can see, she was living a completely double life." David read through the messages, many of which he'd received himself. Seeing them in the context of my marriage records made it clear just how extensively Lila had been deceiving both of us. "I feel like an idiot," he said finally. "You're not an idiot. You're a victim. She manipulated both of us." "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand that she's going to keep manipulating you. Right now, she needs you, because she has nowhere else to go. But once she's back on her feet, once she's figured out her next move, you'll become expendable." David was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence spread across the table. "She asked me to loan her $50,000, he said finally. "For what?" "She said she needs money for a lawyer and a security deposit on an apartment. She promised to pay me back once the divorce settlement comes through." I almost laughed. "Mr. Brennan, there isn't going to be a divorce settlement. We have no children, no shared property except the furniture in our house, and no significant joint assets. The only money she's going to get is whatever she's saved in her personal accounts." "How much is that?" "About $12,000. David's face went pale. "12,000? But she said what she needed to say to get money from you, just like she said what she needed to say to keep me from suspecting the affair." I gathered up the papers and put them back in their folders. "Mr. Brennan, I'm not your enemy here. We're both victims of the same woman's lies, but you need to decide whether you're going to keep being a victim or whether you're going to protect yourself." "What would protecting myself look like?" "Don't give her any money. Don't let her move in with you permanently. And don't believe anything she tells you about me, about our marriage, or about her plans for the future." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and Mr. Brennan? You might want to get tested. I have no idea how many other men she's been sleeping with." I left him sitting at the table, staring at his coffee cup with the expression of a man whose world had just collapsed. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for Phase 2. Marcus called me 3 days later with information that exceeded even my expectations. "Your instincts were right," he said. "All 3 of them have been lying about significant things." "Tell me." "Let's start with Sienna Walsh. She's been in financial trouble for over a year. Credit cards maxed out, behind on her car payments, facing eviction from her apartment. She works as a freelance marketing consultant, but her client list has been shrinking steadily." Interesting. What else? She's been stalking you on social media for 3 years. I found fake accounts she created to follow your company's activities, your personal posts, even your friends' accounts. She knows your schedule, your habits, your favorite restaurants. This isn't casual interest. It's obsessive behavior. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'd known Sienna was manipulative, but I hadn't realized the extent of her obsession. What about David Brennan? He's not as clean as he appears. 2 DUI arrests in the past 5 years, both settled quietly through expensive lawyers. He's also been investigated by his company's HR department 3 times for inappropriate relationships with subordinates. No formal charges, but there's a pattern of him using his position to pressure younger female employees into intimate relationships. And Lila? Your wife is the most interesting of all. She's been planning this divorce for over a year. She's been secretly consulting with lawyers, hiding money in offshore accounts, and documenting fake incidents of emotional abuse to use against you in court. My hands clenched into fists. What kind of incidents? According to her notes, you've been controlling, financially abusive, and emotionally manipulative. She has a whole narrative prepared about how you isolated her from her friends and family, monitored her activities, and threatened her when she tried to assert independence. That's completely false. I know. I've been monitoring your activities for 6 months as part of the corporate security contract, remember? I have documentation of everywhere you've been, everyone you've talked to, every financial transaction you've made. There's no evidence of any of the behavior she's claiming. Can you prove she's lying? Absolutely. I have security footage, financial records, phone logs, everything. If she tries to use any of these fake abuse claims in court, I can destroy her credibility completely. I thanked Marcus and hung up, my mind racing. All 3 of them had been playing long games, manipulating me for their own purposes. Sienna wanted my money and status to solve her financial problems. David wanted to use me as cover for his predatory behavior by positioning himself as the rescuer of an abused woman. And Lila wanted to destroy me financially while painting herself as a victim. It was time to bring them all together. I sent identical text messages to all 3 of them. We need to have a final conversation about this situation. My house, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. It's time for everyone to be honest. Sienna responded first. Of course, I'll be there to support you. David took longer. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Maybe we should handle this through lawyers. Lila was the last to respond. Fine. But I'm bringing a witness. Perfect. The next evening, I prepared the living room like a stage set. I positioned cameras in hidden locations, set up recording equipment, and arranged the furniture so that everyone would be clearly visible and audible. If this was going to be the final confrontation, I wanted it documented. Sienna arrived first, at exactly 8 p.m. She was dressed conservatively, playing the role of supportive girlfriend rather than seductress. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. It might be better to just move forward and leave the past behind. I think everyone deserves to know the truth, I said. David arrived 10 minutes later, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was accompanied by a woman I didn't recognize, probably a lawyer or a friend he'd brought for moral support. Lila was the last to arrive, fashionably late as always. Her witness turned out to be her sister Karen, who'd apparently driven up from Connecticut for the occasion. Caleb, Lila said, settling into the chair she used to consider hers, I hope we can handle this like mature adults. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. I looked around the room at the assembled group. 6 people who had all played roles in the destruction of my marriage, either as perpetrators or enablers. I asked you all here because I think it's time for complete honesty about what's been happening over the past few months. We already know what happened, Karen said. Lila made a mistake, but that doesn't give you the right to throw her out on the street. You're right, I said. Lila did make a mistake. Several mistakes, actually. but I don't think everyone in this room knows the full extent of those mistakes. I pulled out the first folder and set it on the coffee table. These are text messages between Lila and David, documenting their affair over the past 3 months. But they're also documenting something else. Lila's plan to falsely accuse me of domestic abuse in order to gain an advantage in divorce proceedings. Sienna gasped. David's lawyer friend started taking notes. Karen looked confused. That's not what those messages say, Lila protested. Really? Let me read a few excerpts. I opened the folder and began reading. I need to start documenting his controlling behavior. If I can show a pattern of emotional abuse, I can get a better settlement. He doesn't know about the offshore account. I've been moving money there for months. Once I have enough evidence of abuse, I can file for divorce and take him for everything he's worth. The room went silent. Those are taken out of context, Lila said weakly. Are they? Because I have security camera footage that contradicts every single abuse claim you were planning to make. I pulled out the second folder. But that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is how this affair started in the first place. I turned to look at Sienna, who had gone very pale. Did you know that Sienna introduced Lila to David at a company party 6 months ago? Did you know that she encouraged the affair, helped plan secret meetings, and gave Lila advice on how to hide evidence from me? That's not true, Sienna said, but her voice lacked conviction. I have text messages between the two of you going back 8 months. Messages where you encouraged her to cheat, where you helped her plan deceptions, where you actively worked to destroy my marriage. I pulled out the third folder. And do you know why Sienna did all of this? Because she's been obsessed with me for years. She saw Lila's unhappiness as an opportunity to get rid of her competition. She manipulated my wife into having an affair, then turned around and exposed that affair to me, positioning herself as the loyal friend who was just trying to protect me. David's lawyer friend was writing frantically now. Karen was staring at her sister with a mixture of shock and disgust. But wait, there's more, I continued. David, did you tell Lila about your history of intimately harassing your employees? Did you mention the 2 DUI arrests? Did you explain that you specifically target vulnerable women who are in bad relationships? David started to stand up. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, I said quietly. We're not finished. Something in my tone made him sink back into his chair. You see, I've spent the past week investigating all of you. I know about Sienna's financial problems, her obsessive behavior, her history of manipulating other people's relationships. I know about David's predatory pattern with women, his legal troubles, his reputation at work. And I know about Lila's year-long plan to destroy me financially while painting herself as a victim of abuse. I stood up and walked to the center of the room. All 3 of you have been lying to me, to each other, and to yourselves. You've all been playing games, thinking you were smarter than everyone else, thinking you could manipulate the situation to your advantage. What do you want? Lila asked. I want you to understand that the games are over. All of you have exposed yourselves, and now you're going to face the consequences. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. This entire conversation has been recorded. I also have security cameras running. Everything you've said tonight is documented. Sienna jumped up. You can't record us without our consent. Actually, I can. This is my house, and Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. I only need my own permission to record conversations I'm participating in. I looked at each of them in turn. Sienna, you're going to stop contacting me. You're going to stop spreading lies about Lila, and you're going to stay out of my life completely. If you don't, I'll release the recordings of you admitting to manipulating my marriage, along with documentation of your obsessive behavior and financial desperation. David, you're going to break up with Lila immediately. You're going to refuse any requests for money or support, and you're going to recommend that she seek professional help for her manipulative behavior. If you don't, I'll send documentation of your history with women to your company's board of directors and to the local news media. And Lila, I turned to face my soon-to-be ex-wife, you're going to sign divorce papers that give you nothing except your personal belongings. You're going to drop any plans to claim abuse or seek financial support, and you're going to return every penny you've hidden in offshore accounts. And if we don't? She asked. I smiled. Then I release everything. The recordings, the text messages, the financial records, the security footage. I send it all to your employers, your families, your friends, and the local media. I destroy your reputations so completely that you'll have to leave town to escape the scandal. The room was completely silent for a long moment. You bastard, Lila whispered. No, I said. I'm just someone who got tired of being played. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Sienna had called 6 times, each voicemail more desperate than the last. Caleb, please call me back. We can work this out. I never meant for things to go this far. David had sent a series of increasingly frantic texts. This is blackmail. I'm calling my lawyer. You can't threaten people like this. But the most interesting messages came from Lila. I want to make a deal. Call me. I deleted all of them without responding and went about my normal morning routine. Coffee, shower, breakfast, check the news. It felt good to have a normal morning for the first time in months. At 10 a.m., my lawyer called. Caleb, I just received a very interesting phone call from Lila's attorney. She wants to settle the divorce immediately, with no demands for alimony or property division. Really? How generous of her. Her lawyer seemed very eager to wrap this up quickly. He mentioned something about wanting to avoid unnecessary complications in the proceedings. I'm sure he did. What are the terms? She keeps her personal belongings, her car, and her personal bank accounts. You keep the house, the business, and all other assets. No spousal support, no claims on future earnings. It's basically everything you wanted. And the offshore accounts? She's agreed to return all funds that were transferred from joint accounts without your knowledge. Her lawyer is preparing the paperwork now. I hung up and smiled. Phase 1 of my revenge was complete. Lila was capitulating completely, giving up any claim to my assets or future earnings. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Mason, this is Patricia Hendricks from Hartwell Industries. I'm the head of human resources. I believe you have some information about one of our employees, David Brennan. I might. What kind of information are you looking for? We've received some anonymous tips about Mr. Brennan's conduct with female colleagues. I understand you may have documentation that could help us with our investigation. I had to admire David's lawyer friend from the night before. Apparently, she'd decided that her professional reputation was more important than client confidentiality. I do have some information that might be relevant. When would you like to meet? We arranged to meet that afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. I brought copies of Marcus's investigation, including documentation of David's history of inappropriate relationships and his pattern of targeting vulnerable women. Patricia Hendricks was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who clearly took workplace harassment seriously. She reviewed the documents carefully, asking detailed questions about sources and verification. This is very thorough, she said finally. We've had suspicions about Mr. Brennan for some time, but we needed concrete evidence to take action. What kind of action? Immediate termination, for starters. We'll also be reviewing his past conduct to determine if any of his previous relationships with subordinates warrant further investigation. What about his current situation with my ex-wife? That's not directly our concern, but it does establish a pattern of behavior that supports the other allegations. I left the meeting feeling satisfied. David would be unemployed by the end of the week, which would make it much harder for him to support Lila, even if he wanted to. That evening, Theo came over with pizza and beer to celebrate. So let me get this straight, he said, settling into his favorite chair. Lila is giving up all claims to your money and property. David is about to lose his job, and Sienna is too scared to contact you. That's the situation so far. What's next? I wait and see how they handle their new circumstances. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, I got a call from Jennifer Walsh, Sienna's sister. Caleb, I wanted to thank you for not destroying Sienna completely. She told me what happened at your house. She brought it on herself. I know, but she's my sister, and I'm grateful that you gave her a chance to walk away quietly. How is she handling it? Not well. She's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else. I think she finally understands that her behavior was destructive and obsessive. Good. Maybe she'll get some help. I hope so. But I wanted to warn you, she's not the only one who's struggling with the consequences of that night. What do you mean? David Brennan lost his job yesterday. He's been calling Lila constantly, blaming her for ruining his career. Their relationship is falling apart. That was interesting news. I'd hoped that losing his job would make David less attractive to Lila, but I hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. And Lila? She's desperate. She's been calling everyone she knows, looking for a place to stay and someone to lend her money. But word has gotten around about what really happened with your marriage. People are avoiding her. After Jennifer hung up, I poured myself a scotch and considered the situation. My plan was working better than I'd hoped. All 3 of my manipulators were facing the natural consequences of their actions, and I hadn't had to do anything illegal or unethical to make it happen. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. This is David. I need to talk to you, it's urgent. I called the number. Mr. Brennan, I heard about your job. I'm sorry for your loss. Cut the crap, Mason. You destroyed my career. Actually, you destroyed your career. I just provided documentation of behavior that you chose to engage in. Lila is threatening to sue me for breach of promise. She says I led her to believe I would support her financially. I almost laughed. And you're calling me because I need you to tell her that you'll release those recordings if she doesn't back off. Why would I do that? Because if she sues me, everything comes out in court. Your wife's affair, the manipulation, all of it. Do you really want your private business aired in public? He had a point, but not the one he thought he was making. Mr. Brennan, I don't care if the whole world knows that my wife cheated on me. I'm not the one who did anything wrong. But if you're worried about public exposure, maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with married women. She lied to me too. Yes, she did. And now you're both facing the consequences of trusting each other. It's poetic, really. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. I want you to prepare a statement for the press, I said. If David Brennan or Lila Mason try to take their dispute public, I want to be ready with a full accounting of what really happened. Are you sure you want to go public with this? I'm sure I want to be prepared to go public if they force my hand. That afternoon, I got another call from an unknown number. Caleb? It's Karen, Lila's sister. Karen, how can I help you? I'm calling about Lila. She's not doing well. I'm sorry to hear that. She's been staying with me since the divorce papers were signed, but she can't stay much longer. My husband is getting tired of the drama, and frankly, so am I. What do you want me to do about it? She keeps saying that if she could just talk to you, she could explain everything and work something out. There's nothing to work out. The divorce is final, the assets are divided, and we have no reason to communicate. She's talking about writing a book about what happened. She thinks she can make money by telling her side of the story. That was an interesting development. What story would that be? About how you manipulated her into having an affair so you could divorce her without paying alimony. I had to give Lila credit for creativity. She was trying to rewrite history to make herself the victim and me the villain. Karen, I have recordings of Lila admitting to planning false abuse allegations against me. I have documentation of her hiding money in offshore accounts. I have text messages showing her coordination with Sienna to manipulate our marriage. If she wants to go public with her story, I'm happy to go public with mine. There was a long pause. She doesn't know I'm calling you, Karen said finally. But I needed you to understand how desperate she's getting. I'm worried about what she might do. What kind of things? She's talking about confronting you publicly, maybe at your office or at that bar you go to. She thinks if she can force a scene, she can make you look bad and generate sympathy for herself. Thanks for the warning. After Karen hung up, I called Theo. I might need some extra security at the bar for the next few weeks, I said. Lila trouble? Lila's getting desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Don't worry about it. I've got cameras everywhere, and half my customers are cops. If she tries to cause trouble, she'll regret it. That evening, I was working late at my office when the security guard called. Mr. Mason, there's a woman here who says she needs to speak with you. She's pretty upset. What's her name? She says she's your wife. My ex-wife. And no, I don't want to see her. Please ask her to leave. She's not taking no for an answer, sir. She's making quite a scene in the lobby. I sighed and saved my work. I'll be right down. I found Lila in the building lobby, arguing with the security guard and attracting attention from other tenants. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had the desperate look of someone who'd been sleeping poorly for weeks. Lila, you need to leave. Caleb, please, just give me 5 minutes. I need to explain what really happened. I know what really happened. I have it all documented, remember? You don't understand. Sienna manipulated me too. She made me think you didn't love me anymore, that you were planning to leave me anyway. I was confused and scared, and I made bad decisions. It was a good story, and it even had elements of truth. Sienna had manipulated her. But it conveniently left out Lila's year-long plan to defraud me and her decision to falsely accuse me of abuse. Lila, even if that's true, it doesn't change anything. You still chose to have an affair. You still chose to hide money from me. You still chose to plan false allegations against me. I was desperate. I thought you were going to leave me with nothing. So you decided to leave me with nothing instead. She started crying then, big dramatic tears that attracted even more attention from passers-by. I have nowhere to go, she sobbed. David won't see me anymore. My sister is kicking me out, and I can't find a job because everyone knows what happened. That's not my problem. Please, Caleb, I'm begging you. Just give me enough money to get back on my feet. I'll disappear. I'll never bother you again. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had shared my bed and my life for 3 years, who had planned to destroy me for her own benefit. No, I said quietly. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. I turned and walked back to the elevator, leaving her sobbing in the lobby. The next morning, I woke up to find my front yard covered in garbage. Someone had dumped trash bags full of rotting food, dirty diapers, and other disgusting debris across my lawn and driveway. I called the police and reported the vandalism, then called Marcus to review the security footage. The cameras clearly showed Lila dumping the garbage at 3 a.m., her face clearly visible in the infrared footage. You want me to have her arrested? The responding officer asked. No, just document it. I have a feeling this isn't going to be the last incident. I was right. Over the next week, Lila escalated her harassment campaign. She keyed my car, left dead flowers on my doorstep, and called my office repeatedly with fake complaints about my business practices. Each incident was captured on security cameras. Each phone call was recorded. I was building a comprehensive case of stalking and harassment, but I wasn't ready to use it yet. I was waiting for the perfect moment. It came on a Friday night at Theo's bar. I was having dinner with some friends when Lila burst through the front door, drunk and belligerent. There he is, she shouted, pointing at me. The man who destroyed my life. The bar went quiet. Everyone turned to look at the scene unfolding in the doorway. Caleb Mason thinks he's so perfect, she continued, stumbling toward my table. But he's a manipulative bastard who ruined my marriage. Theo appeared at her elbow. Ma'am, you need to leave. I'm not going anywhere until everyone knows the truth about this man. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of me and my friends. This is the man who drove me to have an affair by being emotionally abusive. This is the man who threw me out of my own home with nowhere to go. I stood up calmly and faced her. Lila, you're drunk, and you're embarrassing yourself. Go home. I don't have a home. You made sure of that. You made sure of that when you decided to cheat on me and steal my money. The bar was completely silent now, everyone listening to our confrontation. I never stole anything from you. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. Really? Because I have recordings of you admitting to hiding money in offshore accounts. I have text messages of you planning to falsely accuse me of domestic abuse. I have documentation of you coordinating with Sienna Walsh to manipulate our marriage. You're lying. Am I? Would you like me to play the recordings right here in front of everyone? Her face went pale. She looked around the bar at all the people staring at her, many of whom she recognized from our social circle. You bastard, she whispered. No, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm just someone who got tired of being lied to, cheated on, and stolen from. You destroyed our marriage, Lila. You destroyed your own life. Don't blame me for the consequences of your choices. She stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then she turned and ran out of the bar. The silence stretched for several seconds before conversation gradually resumed. Several people came over to express their support and to say they'd always suspected something wasn't right about Lila's version of events. Theo brought me a free drink. Well, he said, I think that settles the question of who's telling the truth. I smiled and raised my glass. The lines closed. For good.